Chapter 31. Serbia more or less accepts. A pretty strong note, the Kaiser, aboard ship, remarked to the chief of his naval cabinet, Admiral von Müller. The Emperor had learned about the Austrian ultimatum. But it means war, responded the Admiral. No, said Wilhelm, Serbia would never risk it. The Regent of Serbia, Prince Alexander, visited the Russian legation in Belgrade the night of July the 23rd to the 24th to express his despair over the Austrian ultimatum, compliance with which he regards as an absolute impossibility for a state which had the slightest regard for its dignity. His hopes lay with the Tsar, he said, whose powerful word could alone save Serbia. Pasich, the Prime Minister, also stopped in at the Russian legation, later, en route to the 5 a.m. meeting of available cabinet ministers. But Russia offered nothing more than moral support. From St. Petersburg, Sazonov, speaking only for himself, said that his country would offer help, but did not specify what form that help would take. In the end the Tsar's government suggested that Serbia, if resistance were hopeless, should retreat rather than resist, and rely on the sense of justice of Europe to rectify matters. Neither Russia nor its ally France was ready to fight, especially for Serbia. At first the Serbian government was inclined to be defiant. As the ministers thrashed things out they fell into a more realistic mood. It was common ground among the Serbian leaders that their country would be crushed in a war against the dual monarchy. Only Russia, or a combination of the neutral powers, could save them. Such support would be difficult to obtain in any event, and all the more so because there was so little time. The Serbian response was due at 6 p.m., July 25. Pasich and his colleagues were at work continuously, veering between total acceptance of the ultimatum and the temptation to add conditions or qualifications that would allow them later to slip out from under Vienna's rigid requirements. As language was added, changed, and crossed out, the text became less and less legible. Yet it had to be readable enough so that the translator could do his job. Revised and retyped many times, it still remained messy as the deadline approached. The typist was inexperienced, the typewriter broke down. With less than 2 hours to go, an attempt was made to start again in longhand. The final document looked more like a first draft, with words crossed out, ink blots, and the like. As nobody else volunteered to carry it, Pasich did so himself, hurrying to the Austrian legation to hand Serbia's reply to Gisel before the 6 p.m. deadline. He may have been slightly late. Gisel read it quickly, standing up. He already had destroyed his papers and packed his bags. An automobile was poised to drive him to the railroad station. He went through the brief forms of breaking off diplomatic relations, and then left to catch his train. The response to the ultimatum, it was believed outside of Austria-Hungary, accepted all conditions but one. In fact, it contained a number of reservations. It hardly mattered, for the dual monarchy was just going through the formalities. The shipowner Albert Borlin later remembered the disappointment in the German Foreign Office when the news arrived that Serbia had accepted, followed by tremendous joy when a correction was received: Serbia had not fully accepted. Should the Kaiser be recalled? No, said Borlin's Foreign Office source, on the contrary, everything must be done to ensure that he does not interfere in things with his pacifist ideas. Berchtold took the position that his note to Serbia was not an ultimatum because a declaration of war did not automatically follow when the time limit expired. As late as July 25, Berchtold was telling the Russians that the Austrian break in relations with Serbia would not necessarily lead to a war. Our demands could bring about a peaceful solution. But then a cable arrived from his ambassador in Berlin, reminding him that Germany expected Austria to commence hostilities. Here every delay in the beginning of war operations is regarded as signifying the danger that the foreign powers might interfere. We are urgently advised to proceed without delay. Might convening a conference of the neutral powers prevent the outbreak of war? Sir Edward Grey sounded out opinion on the question. The conference that Grey had convoked in London in 1913 had brought peace, however temporarily, to the Balkans. Perhaps it might do so again. But was it the right time to put forward such a proposal? For the moment, the quarrel concerned only Austria and Serbia. It was not yet between Austria and Russia. To Grey's surprise, the Russian ambassador guessed that his government would not agree to a conference. If Germany, Italy, France and Britain were to mediate between Austria and Russia, it would look, he said, as though France and Britain had split from their Russian ally. When the question was put to St. Petersburg, however, Sazonov made no such difficulty. Grey sent notes to his ambassador in St. Petersburg on July 25 outlining his position. He wrote, "I do not consider that public opinion here would or ought to sanction our going to a war over a Serbian quarrel. If, however, war does take place, the development of other issues may draw us into it, and I am therefore anxious to prevent it." In view of Austria's actions, he wrote, Austria and Russia almost inevitably would mobilize against one another, and that is when a four-power mediation might be opportune. It was a Saturday. Grey felt the threat of war was not immediate enough to keep him from the countryside. He placed matters in the hands of his assistant and left town. A cable from Germany's envoy in Belgrade described the confusion and dismay of the Serbian government in dealing with the Austrian ultimatum. Kaiser Wilhelm was delighted. Bravo! One would not have believed it of the Viennese. How hollow the whole Serbian power is proving itself to be, thus it is seen to be with all the Slav nations. Just tread hard in the heels of that rabble. July 25. St. Petersburg. Evening. The Russian General Staff inaugurated the period preparatory to war, the first step on the road that, if further steps were taken, could lead to mobilization. At the conclusion of the meeting, Churchill, in turn, wrote to his wife that Europe is trembling on the verge of a general war. The Austrian ultimatum to Serbia being the most insolent document of its kind ever devised. But he too foresaw no role for Britain to play in the coming conflict, and wrote mainly to say that he would join his family at the beach over the weekend. Paris. The acting government of France took its first military preparedness steps. Secretly, it recalled its generals to duty on July 25, it cancelled leaves of officers and troops July 26, and it ordered the bulk of its army of occupation in Morocco to return to France on July 27. Berlin. The foreign minister, Jago, told German journalist Theodor Wolff that neither London, nor Paris nor St. Petersburg wants war.